Hi everyone, welcome to the Redesigning School Counseling webinar for first year schools. The focus of this webinar is priority goals, and we are prepping for the fourth meeting of your advisory council. My name is Sue Reynolds and I'm the president of the American Student Achievement Institute. Okay, just a reminder that after this webinar, if you have questions, Debbie Hall on our staff is available to chat with you. It's her job to provide follow-up support for schools that are participating in RSC. And you know, as you've been submitting work to her, she's been reviewing it and getting you feedback. So please do feel free to contact her at any point. Okay, so here is our agenda for today, and I'll type on there. So we'll begin like we always do, reviewing the beliefs and the process, and then we'll talk about this month's topic, which is priority goals. We'll look at how to prepare for the meeting, and then do a quick walkthrough and look at the online system. Okay, so quick review. And again, we do this each month just to kind of put this month's step into the big picture. So first of all, it's our belief that school counseling programs help students make sound choices in areas that impact academic success. So the whole focus of RSC is helping kids make good choices. So this is another way to say that, and we believe again that school counseling helps, guidance and counseling activities helps kids make good choices, and as a result of those sound choices, achievement goes up. And so this year, when we've been designing the program, we started out with the achievement goals that were in your school improvement plan. And then we said last month, what are all of the choices that successful students tend to make? If we're going to reach our school's achievement goals, we've got to help kids make those choices. So with your advisory council, you came up with probably a gazillion different choices that kids who are successful in school tend to make. And again, it's not uncommon for schools to have 60 or 70 of these choices that they want kids to make. Those 60 or 70 choices become your program goals. And so last month what you set up was your program goals. And then this month we're going to look at a subset of those goals that we'll call your priority goals. And then we'll work really hard to design a program that's going to address those priority goals. So the student choices are your goals. And then after this, next month or the month after next, we'll look at starting to design focused and targeted guidance activities and counseling activities that are targeting the student choices that you want kids to make. Okay, in terms of where we've been and where we're going, here's the process. You started out last spring just setting up your organizational structure, getting your advisory council on board, and you guys have done a wonderful job of that. Collecting your data, giving the students survey. So there's just a lot of prep work to get ready for your meetings with your advisory council. Then in September this fall, you met with your advisory council for the first time, and you kind of gave them a heads up about what RSC and school counseling was all about. You introduced terminology and just kind of got everybody on board. Then in October, you started defining what the ideal state was. And in that discussion, you talked about the ideal adult practices, ideal student practices, ideal student achievement data, and it was pie in the sky. We said, you know, if we could achieve all of our dreams, what would our vision be? For I think almost all of you, your pie in the sky dream was that 100% of your students would be wildly successful at a high academic rigor level. And it was really quite a lofty vision. We know that visions are lofty, we'll probably never reach them, but we know they define the direction that we need to go. And they also define who we have dreams for. Is it all kids or is it just some kids? And I think for almost all of our RSC schools, it ends up, after a lot of discussion, it ends up being all kids. Okay, then last month you said, okay, in order to reach our goals, what are the choices that kids have to make in order to reach our academic goals. So you defined a ton of different choices that successful kids make. Way too many choices for you to address all in one year, unless you had a ratio of like 1 to 2. So it's just way too much all to help kids with every single choice that they need to make to be successful. So while you have those as your goals, what we want to do this month is to create a subset of those goals, a subset of the student choices that we're going to work our tails off as school counselors to make sure that every student in the building is making that choice. We don't want to have that be a large number. We have a lot of schools that only have one priority goal, so they're only focusing on one student choice, and then they're making sure that the program is designed so that every kid in the building makes that choice. So before we know how many priority goals we can have, and again, it's okay to have one. Most of our schools don't have more than 3, so 1 to 3 focus goals, priority goals that you're really going to hit hard. But before we can decide how many priority goals we can tackle, we want to take a good look at how much time, energy, and funding you're going to have to deliver your program. If you had unlimited time, just tons of time and tons of funding, you could probably do a lot of priority goals. But most school counselors don't have a lot of time and a lot of funding, so we really need to narrow down that number. So what we're going to do this month is the first part of step 4, is we're going to have a discussion with your advisory council about how to get more time and how to get more money, how to get more resources. And it's a wonderful discussion because if you think about it, think about where your council is at this meeting. They have looked at student data, and they know that kids aren't making the choices that we need them to make to raise student achievement. They have come to your meetings because they care about kids. Here's all of these choices that you've created on posters, and you'll bring them back to meeting 4 and put those posters up again. So here's all of these choices that we want kids to make, and they want the kids to make because they care about the kids in their community. And now you're going to come back to meeting 4 and you're going to say, guess what, folks? I don't have any time and I don't have any funding. I don't know how I'm going to help kids do these 70 things. I really want to. I know it's important, but the reality is we just don't have the time or the funding to hit 70 things. So the next question that they're going to have is, well, why not? Why don't you have more time? And you'll be ready with your list of non-program tasks that you'll be able to say, well, I thought you might ask that, so here's what we're spending our time doing that has nothing to do with guidance and counseling. And then we always say these are good tasks. Somebody has to do them. So, but right now is, we're doing them, so that doesn't give us time to, do other things. Or, there's just not enough money, and if we had money, we could do these things. And what will happen at this meeting is that your advisory council will get very creative about how to find more time for you. And they'll start to volunteer to take on some of those non-program tasks so that you can spend your time doing program work. It's an amazing meeting. By this time people have developed trust and they understand that you're there for the kids, and it breaks your heart to not be able to do more, and everybody gets really creative. I can tell you just my own examples. When I got to this step with our advisory council, what happened was our athletic director said, well, I'd be happy to do all the administration for the state testing for ISTEP and ECA in Indiana. And that was really cool. I had another teacher who said, I have 2 sections of Algebra 1 and they're both really, really small. If we could combine them, they both had like 5 students in them. If we could, I'm exaggerating, but it wasn't a lot of students. If we could combine them, that would give me a period off where I could come in and do a lot of the guidance administrative work that has nothing to do with counseling or guidance. And so everybody just kind of pitched in to see what they could do to take those non-program things off of our plate so that we could address all of those choices that we wanted to help kids make that were on posters all around the room. So that's 4A. And then after we've expanded our resources, especially time, then we can go back and say, okay, how many priority goals do we think we can handle? Can we do 2? Can we do 3? Maybe just still 1? And then once we determine how many priority goals we want, then we'll start to look at what should the priority goals be. Okay, so that's kind of a heads up of what's happening this month. Then after this month, once we know what the priority goals are, then we'll look at all that data that the students gave you on the surveys, and we'll start to figure out why kids aren't making those choices. Why aren't they choosing to do the things that we know will help them be successful at school? And there tend to be 3 reasons. Either they don't know it, they don't have enough information to make those choices, or we haven't given them the opportunity to make the choice, or there's something personal social that's getting in the way of all of their decision making. So we'll look at the data and really start to explain why kids aren't making those choices. Okay, and then once we know why, then in March we'll start to look at the activities. We have a ton of resources for you to help explore what other schools are doing to solve the same goals that you have, to address the same goals that you have. That'll really be a cool meeting. And then finally in April, once we know what the activities are, then we'll just start prepping to get ready to deliver those activities. Okay, so that's in a nutshell. And again, this month we're doing priority goals, which means we're going to expand resources first, and then we're going to say, okay, how many priority goals can we tackle off of this list of 70 goals that we worked on last month, and then we'll determine what they're going to be. Okay, let me pause here. Anybody want to jump in with a question? Or type a question in? Not seeing anything. Okay, here we go. And we did that, and we've done that. Okay. So this month we're going to look at your resources and priority goals, and there are several pre-meeting tasks that we need to do so that you'll have data to take to the council meeting and a few other things. So I just want to run through those with you. Okay, the first one is to calculate your actual time use percentages for your entire department. So what you want to do, if you have, let's say, 2 counselors in your school, what you want to do is on all those time task logs that you've been collecting all year, and this is a little bit time consuming, I know, but what you want to do is add up how many boxes you have total for all the counselors combined that are identified as guidance activities, how many boxes are counseling, advocacy, management, and non-programs. So you're adding up all the boxes for all of those 5 different types of activities, and then you're going to add up the total boxes for all the activities. So however many boxes there are for A through E, you're going to add all those up to give you the total boxes. Okay. Then what we want to do is we're going to take the total number of guidance boxes. So in other words, you would take the A and divide it by the total number of all boxes. So you're going to take A divided by F, and that will give you the percentage of time times 100 will give you the percentage of time that you spend on guidance activities. And then the same thing for counseling, advocacy, management, and non-program. Okay. One thing that I think is really interesting is that non-program total. And we've talked about this before, I think, but if this non-program total, let's say it's 70%, that means that you don't really have full-time counselors. You have a 70% something else, and you have a 0.33 or 0.3 FTE for a counselor. So in other words, since these non-program tasks are not counseling tasks, any time that your counselors are spending doing these tasks, you can't count that as part of their counseling FTE, full-time equivalency, because they're not counseling, they're not doing guidance and counseling during that time. So, and again, in my school, when we first did this, we found out that we didn't have full-time counselors. We had 1/10 time counselors because we were only spending 10% of our time in these activities up here. Okay, so that's how to figure out your department's time use. Okay, then I kind of jumped ahead of myself here, but this is how to calculate the actual number of counselors. So you want to determine how many counselors you have in reality because they're spending their time doing guidance and counseling tasks. So you're calculating your FTE, or your full-time equivalency. If you had 2 counselors and both were spending all of their time doing guidance and counseling tasks, your FTE would be 2. You'd have 2 full-time equivalent staff members. So to calculate it, we're going to, for each counselor, we're going to take 1. Let me do it. I'm going to explain this a little differently. We're going to take your non-program boxes, and we're going to subtract out your total. Divided by your total boxes. So if our non-program boxes was 9, we take 9 divided by 10 and get 0.9. So then we're going to take 1 and we're going to subtract this number. So if this number were 0.9, we'd get 1 minus 0.9 equals 0.1 times 100 ends up being 10. So 10% of the time is spent is on school counseling tasks. Or I have a 0.1 FTE. Here's an example. Mrs. Jones, she has 506 non-program boxes. Her total boxes is 2,025. She subtracts this number from 1, and she gets 0.25. I'm sorry, when she does this calculation, she gets 0.25. She subtracts that from 1, and that gives her a full-time equivalency of 0.75. So for Mrs. Jones, she's not really a full-time counselor. She's a 3/4 time counselor because we're subtracting out the non-program tasks. Then after you've done this for each counselor, just add up, all the counselors' FTEs to give the total FTE for your department. So this is really important because when we talk with your counsel, we want them to understand that while on paper there may be full-time counselors, in reality, because of all the legitimate other things that have to happen in a school, you are not full-time counselors. You're part-time counselors and part-time doing something else. Okay, so that's how to do the math on that one. Any questions? Anybody want to jump in? Okay, can go on. Okay, now in calculating the ratio, we want to use the actual FTE instead of the on-paper FTE. So to determine the student to counselor ratio, you're going to take the total student enrollment and you're going to divide that by your total FTE the way we calculated it on the previous slide. So we're using your actual time spent on counseling. So for example, when I added all my staff, I had, I may have 2 staff members, but because they're not spending all of their time in school counseling, I ended up with a 1.75 FTE. I divide that into 700 and I get 400 students per 1 counselor. So again, if I had divided 2 FTE in here the way it is on paper, not in reality, that would have made that ratio look a little different. So, okay, so there's the math on how to calculate using an adjusted FTE, the actual student to counselor ratio. Okay, then so that's all the math that we're doing on FTEs and ratios and time and all that. New idea, another thing that we need to do pre-meeting is to print out the perception of the counselor's report. That was part of the survey also, and basically when you get to the online system, you're going to click on Student Survey, then you click on View Reports, and then you want to select the current school year, the name of your school, and then you click on the button that appears for the counselor perception summary report. when you see that report, once in a while we have a school that does not want to share that report. They don't think it's complimentary of their counselors, and they just don't want to share it. So feel free to edit that part out of the council discussion. I would say, though, 99.9% of the time the counselors do share it. And if it's not complimentary, like I think I've mentioned before, that one of the school counseling program that I just have the most respect for in the state. They're really have a wonderful program, great counselors. The first time they did this, the students said that the counselors didn't care about them, the counselors weren't available, counselors didn't care, didn't talk to them about high achievement. I mean, it was just, it was not good. So those counselors, I mean, it broke their hearts, but they had to figure out then, if we have a perceptions issue, maybe that's something that we need to work on. So what they ended up doing for their Gold Star activities is that a whole first year they worked on the perception that kids had of them, because if they knew that if kids thought that they didn't care about the kids, they would never come in to see the counselors. So they had to work on that. So if your data here is not real complimentary, you have to just kind of think about that. Is it because there really is an issue and maybe you don't care about kids as much as you thought maybe you did, and that's coming across to the kids? Or is it a perceptions issue, and so you need to work on that perception a little bit? And again, I don't know what it will end up like. I just know that we have a lot of really good school counseling programs that the perception is that the counselors don't care. And just a little aside there, I often wonder if the kids have the perception that counselors don't care because we're always talking about how busy we are. I know in my own school, my co-counselors and I had spent a lot of time talking with everybody about how busy we were. And we noticed that, people stopped coming in to see us, and we thought, well, no wonder they think we're busy. So, that may be just changing that. Just, we tried, as a result of our perceptions report, we wanted every student and every teacher to think that we had nothing better to do than to talk to them. And it was really hard because we were as overwhelmed as the next counselor, but we wanted to change that perception. So at any rate, so I think you'll find that data interesting. Okay, then one last thing, I think this is the last thing that we need to do before this report, before this meeting, is to enter the non-program activities into the online system. And I'll show you how to do this when we get online, but it's pretty easy. And we just need to make sure that the non-program activities get entered in so you can print out a report, so that when your counsel says, well, what are you spending your time doing? You can say, oh, I thought you'd ask that. Here's a report, and you'll just pass that out. Okay, so I think I'm ready to go through this month's walkthrough. Any questions before we go on? Okay, I'm not hearing any. Let's go online then. And again, jump in if there's something that's confusing. I actually had this all up, and when my computer crashed right before we logged on, I lost it, so let me log in again. Okay, so I've gone into the login page, and I'm logged in as Demo School. Good. Okay, so I'm going to go to the process page. And let's just kind of walk through some of these things that we've been talking about. Scrolling down to December, and the webcast that we are recording right now will be here if you want to watch it later. We would like you to upload your counselor time use logs this month, and there's an uploader button here. The rubric item for these asks for a first semester time use log and a second semester time use log for all of your counselors. So if there's 2 counselors in the school, you're going to end up uploading 4 logs, first semester and second semester for each of the 2 counselors. So now when you go to upload, when you click that button, it's going to allow you to find a file on your computer and then upload it to us. And you can only upload one file. So while you may need to submit 4 logs, you're going to need to scan those 4 logs into one file to upload. And again, if you have trouble with that, call Debbie, and we can help you if you need help with scanning or whatever. So, but you can only if you don't do it that way, when you upload the second one, it's going to delete the first one. So there's only room for one thing in the system. Okay. Then on the next row, you're going to edit your counselor time use percentages. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that, show you what that's like. So when you took the counselor survey, when the students were surveying, you entered some time use percentages just based on guesses. And so when you come into the system, there will be numbers in here from when you did the survey. Now that you have actual data from your time use studies, we'd like you to update this using the actual data. And you'll want to change up here, are these percentages based on a time use log? Yes. Before it was a no, but yes, now they are. And then upload those and then save. Okay? So pretty self-explanatory. Okay. Then we're going to enter the non-program activities. So I'm going to click the enter button. And we're just entering non-program this month. So when you log in, there won't be any activities listed down here yet. So you're going to go to this section, enter program activity. You'll enter the activity name. We suggest that be something short and very concise and descriptive. And then the description. So, if it's whatever you're describing, hall duty or lunch duty or master scheduling, or substitute teaching, whatever, you just describe it. And now on activity type, you have several options. 3 guidance options: counseling, advocacy, management, and non-program. Before I click non-program, I want you to look at the next 2 sections. If you click anything but non-program, you're going to be asked to put in what goal is the activity going to help you meet. And you're also going to be asked to link that activity with guidance indicators. But watch what happens when I click non-program. Because non-program activities don't help you deliver any part of the school counseling program, the system has graded this out. So everything, you can't enter anything more because non-program activities aren't part of the school counseling program. So when are you going to do this? You would check off the months. Who's going to do it? These are people that are on your advisory council. I'm sorry, on your steering team, or you can put somebody not listed here and then put somebody's name in. And then when everything's filled, these buttons will become hot, and you want to save and add a new activity, or save and return to the previous page. Or you can also delete an activity if you put one in and then the principal says, so no, you no longer have to do master scheduling. You can just take that off there. Okay, so that's entering the activities. And again, we're just doing non-program activities. And I'll go back to the process page. And now we're going to conduct the advisory council meeting. So I'm going to go to the manual, and we'll scroll down to this month's meeting, which is resources and priority goals. Click on the presentation, and then I'll open that. Okay, so we'll walk through this really fast. Okay, so today's agenda, we're going to do, this is what now you're talking about with your advisory council. We're going to review, we're going to expand our guidance resources, and then we're going to identify priority goals. So, and then here's the process review. And, okay. Now, we're reminding people again that out of each discussion there's a product that is developed, and we already have 2 products, the vision and the program goals. And then today we're going to work on two additional products. We're going to have a plan for expanding our resources, and then we're going to select priority goals. Okay, so here we go for today. So in this slide, we're trying to establish that we have this large number of program goals. And really, when I do this, I like to bring back all the flip charts from the previous month that everybody, that we wrote while people were brainstorming. And I'd like to just put them all over the room to remind people that we have all of these program goals. You can also pass out the list of program goals that the online system will produce. And then what we want to say is, okay, today we're creating a subset of program goals. These are our priority goals. And what we're going to do with these priority goals is implement extra activities next year to address these goals. And we're also going to monitor data for those priority goals to see if the activities that we're implementing are doing any good, are having an impact. Okay, so we just want to establish this. Time and resources limit the number of goals that we can identify as our priority goals. So we really need to look at how many of all of those goals can we take on as priority goals and really focus on implementing. So what we're going to do today is 2 different activities. One is to just have a chat about how can we expand the resources, especially time. If we can get the counselors more time, we can do a whole lot more good for kids. We can have a whole lot more priority goals. So first discussion is going to be about expanding our resources, especially time. And then the second discussion is going to be to actually select a small number of our program goals. And again, if you've given them that list, a small number of the goals that are on that list that are going to be our priority goals that we're really, really going to hit hard next year. So let's first of all talk about expanding our resources. So here are school counseling resources. Time is the big one. Time impacts the ratio of how many students we have per counselor. But then there's additional resources in the school, in the community, space, technology, materials, supplies, professional development. The perceptions of the school counselor is a resource. How kids feel about us as counselors, that's something that's going to impact our program. That's a good reputation, a good perception of us is important. So we'll look at that as well. And then funding, excluding personnel, but funding for materials and supplies and software, and we want to look at that as well. So we're looking at expanding our resources. The big one is time. Okay, so let's begin by looking at the counseling staff. So now on this slide you would have written down, Jane Doe, what her FTE was, and then the percentage of time that she spends performing school counseling tasks, which would be everything but the non-program. And then the adjusted FTE. So we're showing people, that Jane Doe on paper is a full-time FTE, but she really only spends 70% of her time doing school counseling tasks. So her adjusted FTE is a 0.7. So so we're helping people understand why we don't really have 2 counselors, even though there are 2 people who on paper have been identified as counselors. Okay. So then we're saying, okay, now let's talk about our ratio. Here's how many students we have in the building. Here's how many counselors we have after we adjust for the FTE. And when we do the math, that ends up being, 4,226 students for 1 counselor, or whatever your ratios end up being. Okay, so now let's look at some of the other things. Does a school counseling support staff position exist? We just took a stab at putting an X in one of these boxes. You can flip these boxes around and put the X under the no and the blank one up on yes. So you can edit these slides as appropriate. Non-program tasks, counselors are responsible for these non-program tasks. And again, you've taken some of the big ones and you put them on the slide, but you also have the printout so you can pass it out and say, here's the whole list, but here's the ones that take the most of our time. So in terms of time, in this activity, and this is really fun, we're asking the council if you could determine what percentage of our time you would like us to spend on these tasks, what would you do? And typically here I ask people to just get out a piece of scratch paper, write the words guidance, counseling, advocacy, management, and non-program, and just say, how much of our time do you want us to spend advising or guiding kids, or counseling kids that have personal social problems, or advocating or standing up for kids, that need somebody to stand up for them, or managing our programs, and how much of our time do you want us to spend on non-program tasks. So they're writing that down on a piece of paper, and I usually make a joke that it cannot add up to be above 100%. So, it's only 100% of our time, not more than 100%. Okay, so then what we're doing, and this is really, I think, kind of a fun activity. On the wall, there is, you will put up 5 Instagraphs, one for each type of activity. And we're going to use these Instagraphs for the council to show how they would like counselors to spend their time. Whoops. And so what they'll do, let's just look at this at this first one. You would have given everyone 5 sticky dots, or just markers, and ask them to come up and put 1 mark on each of the posters. So they come up to the guidance poster, and here's time percentages at the bottom. So I come up there and I decided that I want our counselors to spend 40% of their time advising or guiding kids. So I would put my sticky dot or my X right above this 40 box. Then the next person up, if they also want 40, they would put their sticky dot on top of mine. And the next person who wanted 40, you put the sticky dot above that. What happens is you'll end up with a bell curve here, and it's really kind of cool to see that grow. And then everybody, when they're finished with that one, they'll go to the counseling poster, they'll put their sticky dots up there, and you'll end up with a bell curve on the counseling one, then advocacy, management, and non-program. So we've got bell curves on all of them, and it always amazes me that this works out, but it always does. That the average, the top of each one of those bell curves, when you add up the 5 of them, it'll add up very close to 100%. It'll be like 99 or 101. So you can just tweak a little bit to then end up with your ideal time use percentages. So okay, okay. So then on this screen, at this point, I don't know how that got saved in here, but this is all blank. I'm sorry, these are not be blank. These would have you would have filled in your time percentages here, whatever they are. They would add up to 100. And then so you've got the actuals on it, and then so you take the posters and you say, okay, what you all said was that your desired amount of time for guidance was 40%. Our actual is 20%, so we're off there. Your desired time for counseling was also 40%. We're at 30%, so we're off a little bit there. And you go through each of them. Your desired time for non-program was 10%, and we're at 90% or whatever it actually is. So this gives folks a way to see how there needs to be adjustments in time use, because how they want you to spend your time is not how you're actually spending your time. So, okay. So, and then the light bulbs start going off. We need to give counselors time so that they can do the things that we want them to do. Okay, so we've got that behind us now. Now we're going to switch gears and look at funding. We're looking at your total budget. For a lot of schools, that's 0. And then the total number of students, and whatever that is in the school. So 954, and then you will have calculated your per pupil expenditure. It may end up being 0, and in a lot of schools, I know in my school it's 56 cents. And so again, we're just kind of planting the seeds with folks that, you know, you might be able to do a lot of really cool activities if you had the funding to support them. $500 would have doubled my school counseling budget. But you know, to a large industry or business in your community, $500 is like nothing. It's like pennies, you know. So, you know, we've had lots of cases where business has stepped up and said, you know, if we were to provide you with a $500 grant, what would you do with it? And then you can, you know, have lots of ideas. So, okay. So again, we're talking about that. Network, your network is a resource, and so you're just helping folks understand that school counselors meet on a regular basis with, and then you're writing, you know, who you meet with. Community, who do you meet with in the community? This is important. We have a lot of counselors who are never allowed to go out of their school, and networking in the community, you know, in terms of career development and mental health counseling, and I mean, it's just really important that those relationships are developed. So getting out in the community is important, and if that's not happening, we want to make sure that some people are aware of that. Okay, then another resource is people in your school who also provide school counseling type activities. So maybe you have a teacher advisor program. That's a guidance, you know, program, so you could list that in here. Maybe you have a teacher mentor program where there's not counseling but friendly listening. So it's a level 1 intervention. You could you know, enter that in there. You know, anywhere where you have teachers that are helping to deliver the guidance and counseling program, we want to make sure that we've got that captured. And again, we're trying to paint the picture that, you know, with that resource, with teachers helping out to provide guidance and counseling, we can tackle a lot more goals. Okay, and same thing with community members. You know, in guidance, one that's available in most communities is that Boy Scouts have a merit badge on careers. And so if you have, you know, a Boy Scout population, some of them are going to get career guidance from their Boy Scout troops. Okay, professional development. We want to identify where you're able to go to stay up to date. So we've listed some national conferences and then also some state conferences that are common. And again, if you're a school where the counselors are not allowed out of the building, you know, we want to expose the fact that your counselors are not up to date in their practice. And, you know, this gives you a chance to talk about how it's not like math where there's a textbook that gets updated every so many years. You know, for counselors to get updated, they have to go to professional development activity events. So, okay. Then additional resources, this is just real quick, space, technology, and again, you're probably going to fly through these unless there's an issue. What materials you have, supplies, and then finally the perceptions of the school counselors. You would at this point pass out that report from the online system so that folks could see, you know, what students' perceptions were of their counselor. And you know, if it's not positive, I would, you know, be in a position where you could tell your counsel that you talked about this with your other counselors or maybe with your principal, and that your take is that you really do have caring counselors, but the perception is that you don't, and that's a problem. And then, you know, that could be a resource that you work on, is getting that good perception. Okay, then, so now we've talked about all these priorities. Now we want to look at what's most important to people. So there's a resource instagraph. This time we're going to the bars will grow sideways. So the first person will come up and say, you know, the time is my big thing. I'm going to put my X in that box, and the next person will put their X in. So we're going to figure out what's most important to people to address as you're expanding resources. And then we're going to just very informally talk about a resource expansion plan. So I would write down in here, you know, number 1 was time. This is something that we do want to work on next year, and here's what we're going to do. And then you're brainstorming with folks and just writing down things that you not only could do, but you will do to get more time. Perception of the school counselors, that's another resource that came up high. What are you going to do to change that? So you've got that in there. So, okay. Oops. Okay, so now we've expanded our resources. Hopefully people have stepped up to say, I can do these non-program tasks, or, you know, if I purchase this software for you, that would make life a whole lot more efficient. So we've expanded our resources, and now we want to go back to priority goals. So given that we have identified many choices that students must make in order to be successful at school and prepare for post-secondary and careers, our students, and given that our students make some choices at a greater rate than others, and given that we have limited resources, especially funding and time, which 1 to 3 choices should take priority as we design our school counseling program for next year? So you will have given everybody a copy of the student goals report, and this lists all of your goals. It tells what grade level that you're holding that goal for and what student group it's for. And then we've also got the data in terms of where students are currently, the percentage of students that are currently making that choice. Okay, so they've got that report, and now you're just going to kind of talk it through. Which goals jump out to you as you look at all these, because they're key to academic success, but also students aren't currently making that choice. You know, what jumps out? So we're going to discuss, given the degree to which our students are already making or sound choices in areas that impact achievement, and given the amount of time and other resources available, how many priority choices should we tackle, and which goals should be priority? So we're going to establish, let me back up. So there's no like really quick way to do this. I've never had any complaints from schools, though. It's just a very informal discussion about which of those areas you should really, really work on. And hopefully you've also, through this discussion, been able to gain some time. Okay, so now once you've decided what your priority goals are, then we want to put goal data to them. So you're going to say, okay, here's our priority goal. We have the goal for this student group. We want them to make this choice. This is the percentage of kids that are currently making that choice, and this is the target percentage that we want the data to be at a year from now, is the timeline, a year from now. So we give some examples. Student group kindergartners, choice have fewer than 10 absences per year. Current data is 87%. We want to up that to 95%. So third grade example, a fifth grade example. Here's middle school examples. So you might take out those other slides. If you are middle school, take out the elementary and the high school slide. But just to give people kind of an example. So we want to make the targets challenging but reachable. And we want to remind people that it's not just the counselors that can implement, but everybody can help kids make those choices. So in this slide, we're writing up what the priority goals are. So this slide actually is going to end up looking like this, the previous slide, the sample slide, but your actual student group and choice, you know, your goals will be in here. And then the target data is what the council is going to help you come up with. Okay, so finally, after we know what our priority goals are, we want to do a capacity check. There's several different points where we want to give the counselors the chance to say, there's no way I can do all that. So if you're starting to feel really overwhelmed at this point because there are so many priority goals and you don't know where you're going to find the time, this is where you need to speak up. So given the resources available, including time, do we have the capacity for implementing activities that will address each of our priority goals? So if you're feeling the answer is no, you need to speak up here, because if you don't, people are going to expect you to address all those priority goals. So you have to speak up. So if the answer is no, then you have two choices. One is to get additional resources, you know, hire another counselor. That has happened in some RSC schools as a result of this discussion, but more likely it's going to be that people are going to jump in to do some of the non-program tasks that you had been assigned. And the other thing you could do is omit some of the goals. If there's no way to find the time to address the goals, then you can't have the goals. So you may need to omit some of the goals. Okay, then looking ahead, we're wanting people to understand that at the next meeting, we're going to talk about why students don't make those targeted choices. And there will be some homework before the next meeting. We're going to ask you to paw through some data and to bring some data with you, data that you found with you, to help explain why kids aren't making the choices that we just identified. And so you might say to your counselor, so I'm going to give you a packet of sticky notes right now. Just keep those until right before the next meeting. We'll give you an email that has a link to some of our student data in it, and you'll use those sticky notes when you do that analysis before you come back to the next meeting. Okay, this is, if you want to go into detail at this point, you can. This is also in the cover letter, though, of how they should fill out the sticky notes. And then looking ahead beyond that, in meeting 5, we'll talk about activities that will help kids reach the priority goals. And that's it. So this meeting, you can see it's kind of a long meeting. There's 2 distinct parts to it. We've had some schools decide to turn it into 2 different meetings, one to talk about resources, the other one to talk about priority goals. And we've had some that have just done a 2-hour meeting and just really stayed on task to get everything in. So, okay, that is it. Let's go back and look at the rubric real quickly, and then we'll be finished. Okay. So, one thing you'll be turning in is the resource action plan. You're going to upload that. And the only thing we're looking for is that the action plan includes activities designed to gain resources for the school counseling program, and that a target data or a target situation is included in the resource plan. And then you'll be submitting your priority goals, and really the only thing that we're checking for there is that 1 or more priority goals have been identified. Okay, so that's the rubric. I'm going to go back one last time to the online system, and let's go back to the process page. We're identifying priority goals. I want to show you on entering those priority goals. It's really easy. Just click the Enter Edit button, and you're going to select priority goals. So when you click this, all of your goals will pop up, and this is demo school. I don't have all 70 goals in there, but you get the idea. And they'll all be blank, and you're just going to check the ones, 1, 2, or 3 that you're really going to work on that are your priority goals. So where did these goals come from? You entered them in last month. So they'll already be in there. They're from your goals discussion. And now we're going to pick out which ones are our priority goals and save. So that's step 1. And then step 2 is we need to put a data target to those. So the first part here is to select your priority goals. The second part is to enter the priority goal data. Going to click Enter, and this report takes a little bit of time. There it is. So what we've done on here is, here's the school's first goal: have an up-to-date written 4-year course plan. We have data on that because it was on the RSC survey, or in Indiana, the Learn More survey. So we've actually provided this data for you, and we've indicated here that this is survey data. And so what you need to do then is to figure out, okay, these will be blank. You need to figure out, okay, if it's 32, 33, 32, and I'm not planning on doing a lot, I probably want to put in 33 or 32 again. But if I'm going to have this huge initiative and we're going to make sure that every single student in the building has a 4-year high school course plan, I might even bump that up to 100, because that's the goal, is that every kid has one. Then you want to set the date for that goal. We suggest March of the next year, because that's when the next set of data from the surveys will come in. So you're on this, you're just putting in your target percentages. You may decide that you don't want to use the survey data. If I click Other Data, I'm getting a note here, and then I am just going to save that. And now I get a text box that allows me to count something. So we're going to count the number of four-year high school course plans that are on file in the counseling center. Okay, so now we're not based on student reporting, we're actually going to count how many of these course plans we have. Because we've never done this before, the number is 0 because there are none, but we're going to do this with every student, and that should jump up to 100, and then we need to put in the date for when we're going to implement that, and March 2016. Okay, and then save, and that saves it. Okay, so that's how they enter the data in, and I think that's about it. Let's see, let's go back to the process page, see if there's anything else we need to cover. I know I'm over a little bit. I'll just go back in this way. Okay, priority goals, we talked about entering, where are we? Entering the program goals, enter the minutes, review the rubric items, and then submit to Debbie for review. This is, I think I said this on the resource action plan. After that's completed, you can just upload that. It's the same kind of uploader button as the time use logs. So, okay, I think that's it. Let's see who has questions. Anybody want to type in or jump in? Okay. Let's see, we did that. Okay, so that's it. Thank you, everyone, and we really look forward to hearing back from you next month, and to see how your meetings are going. And it's just been exciting to hear the progress that you've been making. So thank you. Call Debbie if you have questions. We're here to serve you. So just let us know what you need, and we'll do our best to make it happen. So, okay, thanks so much. And if we, I guess we won't talk to you before the holidays. So everybody have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. And as we always like to end, don't forget that you make a difference in the lives of young people. Thanks, everyone.